This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.
Welcome to this very special episode. I always say very special episode, but I think this is quite a nice one because I've been waiting for this one. Harry is going to debunk the myths surrounding Rassie. Why do everybody hate him so much? So welcome back, Harry. And you're actually in South Africa at the moment, aren't you?
At this very moment that this is playing, yes, I will. By the time, the magic of time and space. And by the way, I don't think everyone hates Rassie, but there's a significant portion of the world that doesn't know they're going to kill the golden goose. You know, the thing that they will later on, looking back, go, that was a really cool time, and it was innovative and interesting, and it grew. And they'll look back and say, God, I kind of missed that guy. And there are other people who really just cynically farm off of him, use him. He's like the irrigation for their farm. They're just slapping on there. They say something really stupid and they put Rassie's name and picture on it, and then they hope it hits. So yeah, let's do some demystifying.
Well, before we do into that, we've got 8 myths that we want to investigate a little bit. I will just talk to you quickly about our mutual acquaintance. Let me be very neutral as much as I possibly can. I don't think acquaintance is the right word, but I'm not going to say friend or enemy. Matt Williams, who makes a living out of slagging off Rassie. Whatever Rassie does, he breathes too hard, he breathes too slowly, he talks too loud, he talks too softly, whatever. He goes on TV somewhere, on YouTube somewhere, and slags off and just mouths off and abominations or whatever. What is that guy's story?
He's an Australian who ended up, I think it was West Harbour guy, Sydney area, who then got picked to coach Scotland at a particularly low time in Scotland's rugby history. Although he had some good players, he definitely had more Lions caliber players at his disposal than Gregor Townsend has had it many times. But Matt Williams was a terribly failed coach, but lived on in Ireland as well as in Scotland as sort of a pundit. Looks good on TV, got a good turn of phrase. He's not afraid. So editors and people behind the scenes, they test the writers on how far you'll go. Like, hey Harry, can you write an article that says, Michael Cheika is definitely going to do this or that, or he's the worst guy in the world. And then your tolerance for doing that, your ability to be sold and bought, will make you say yes. Matt Williams is sort of a yes guy. He's not a no guy. He's not a brave guy. He's more like, oh yeah, all right, I'll say that. So then he goes on and blathers. And then people sometimes, when you question it or contest it, I did just dropped a thread. I just went back through the career of Matt Williams, which was short and bleak and gloomy and dim. But I went through it and I kind of deconstructed. If the criticism was about the style of play, then I just sort of went into his Scottish coaching career. And it was surprising to me, 38 kicks, 37 kicks. I go, well, that's kind of weird because I thought the basis of the criticism wasn't the winning of the Lions series by Rassie, it was the way he did it. And so I thought, well, that's strange. So many nils, so many sixes, so many nines, so many penalty goals, so few tries. And then also I started looking, well, maybe it was they just got monstered by, top teams. Those teams weren't that great, they were killing him. And then I looked at, well, what about sort of the territory game, possession game? It all just fell apart. I started thinking, I think these were maybe the most abominable games ever played by Scotland. And maybe he's projecting, I think is the word psychologists use, where you hate yourself, you loathe yourself, you wish you were better. And so you look at someone who's doing it well and you try to find little holes in their game. And so I just dropped that sort of thread. Got a lot of traction in Scotland, by the way. They still remember how terrible he was. But also the hypocrisy of it, because after a game, we didn't like what a touch judge did. He slammed him. Then he slammed him again. And then in one press conference, he said, this guy's cost us 3 games, and it's only against us. So that's integrity. You're not just saying it's a random set of events. You're saying that touch judge wants me to lose, me and my team. Rassie's never done that. And interestingly enough, I got the story that said they pulled the touch judge and they said Matt Williams got his revenge. He made sure that guy was pulled. This is 2006 when you could still do that. And, way before the video. So interestingly enough to me, I thought, well, what a doers. First of all, why are you calling out Rassie for the Lions series when you did something worse and it worked? Second, you kept losing and your style was, I don't know, shall we say, very boring, a boring style of rugby. And then when he did try to play exciting, 23 offloads, I saw 25 handling errors. So yeah, it just seemed like he doesn't understand rugby. So the big problem is Matt's more of a guy who wants to feed off it. But then the criticism comes back and says to guys like me who do that, why are you responding to him? Don't feed the pigeons. And my response was 20 times in a row, I won't. And on the 20th time, I will do a deconstructive thread that eviscerates you and makes you sit on your toilet and cry. And then I'll ignore you for 20 times again. Okay, so that's our game we're going to play. And every time I do it, it's going to be worse. So I'll ratchet it up next time, but it's going to be 20 times from now, Matt. And then at some point you'll stop or you won't, but either way, you're discredited. So that's the game I'm playing with him. And I think it's important not to just always ignore them. Otherwise, that stuff gathers oxygen. And I started thinking, what is it about that sort of unmanly, cowardly type of approach that really just pisses me off? And so then I decided, let's have an episode about what it is.
Now, the interesting thing is, the word projection has been bandied out around the world a lot lately. I'm not going to expand into that. What I accuse you of is what I'm most probably guilty of. And isn't this a classic example of that?
Yeah, exactly. When we fail at something or we're beaten, it's very tempting, like the great late scholar Bernard Lewis said, to ask this question: who did this to me? This persecuted. And I don't like it. And to the extent that was present in Rassie's makeup in the beginning, I didn't like that either. And I was clear about it. I don't like that. I don't think it led to Springbok greatness. I think Springboks got a lot better when that was shelved and the second and third phases of Rassie took place, just pure innovative, yes, disruptive, but not sour, not who did this to me. When you say who did this to me when something happens to you in your life, and I'm talking to everyone about any part of your life, if your first instinct is always who did this to me, you'll never grow. What you really should analyze is how did it happen? And then are there other people to whom this happened or groups? And how did they did it? How did they recover? And then copy them. So instead of who did this to me, who's doing it better and who can I copy? That's the whole way I construct my whole life. And it makes you happier. It makes you clearer. You get to the analytical part, which is where guys like Rassie really thrive. Article today that just Eddie Jones wrote that said he was assigned Rassie's laptop in 2007 when he was a consultant and Rassie was going to be Stormers coach. And he couldn't believe what was on the laptop. For every player, every scenario, every twist, every plot twist, Rassie had it analyzed in depth in a way where Eddie almost felt bad about himself. Like, wow, I didn't know that you could do this level of analysis. I'm sure in 2025, it's much more common. But in 2007, when we were still sort of amateurish, Rassie's ahead there. So I think Rassie has always had the analytical part. But he and us, we're at our worst when we say, who did this to us? Always. And I mean, even if someone did do something to you, it's not the place to stay for longer than about 10 minutes. Then you're going to move on and say, but we're playing next week. So how do we win? And so I think someone like Matt or who's the other guy, some other troll farmers from New Zealand I can think of, they're really just always out to show some sort of big conspiracy against them or find the most negative parts of our human nature. And we're playing a game. We're celebrating a game. We love our sport. It's super fun. If you subtracted any part of the rugby family, South African may be one of the worst subtractions you'd ever do if you just got rid of us. What a boring sport it would be. But I would say that about the Scots. I would say that about the Kiwis. I love the hilarity of the different styles. And I like a Razor. I like an Andy Farrell. I don't know. I just look forward to seeing these guys. And so I don't know why there's such a ugly animosity, and I would say borders on hatred by some towards Rassie. And it's ugly, it's bitter, it's poisonous.
God, I want to be a little petty now. Just what was that winning percentage of Matt Williams when he was coaching Scotland?
Yeah, you can quote the 17%. More terribly is a wooden spoon, winless in the Six Nations, getting beaten by Italy, struggling to get over 10 points in a game, being happy at 12. With having plenty of ball, 65% territory, 65% possession in one of his games, and they didn't even make a line break, but 25 offloads. It sounded like Goof Troop on steroids. And so I just wonder why he's on there. And I just think it's some people have, whatever the chiseled jaw and the nice hairline people want, and they're willing to sell themselves and just get out there and say anything they want, knowing that the blowback's not really going to be that incredible. You'll get some mean tweets at you, but really, he's not really going to be afraid for his life, because the truth is that's not really going to happen. So, I think it's a bad way to live, and may we never do that ourselves. I mean, it's tempting. There are some people you just kind of, in sport, there's always a rival, there's an enemy, and you kind of want to say something. But no, I think, and the only reason why I'm saying things that are pretty harsh to Matt is because he earned it. Like I said, I saw 40 things before I commented once. So that's my ratio.
This, we don't want to give it too much oxygen. This video is not just going to be about Matt Williams. We started him because he's like the flag bearer. But we're the opposite. We're the flag bearers of truth here at the Lekker Rugby Pod. So when the Lekker Rugby Pod says it, it's true. So let's look at the myths that you talked about. Starting your first one, you said allegedly it all started with Rassie. Now, what is it, and what do you mean by that?
So you'll see this a lot. This will help you as you consume the news, and it's headline farming usually. And you'll see an article, most recently, Joe Schmidt losing a tough loss. And first, coaches, don't talk so much and do so much right after a tough loss. Just make a rule for yourself that for that week, you're going to be very measured with your communication. So Joe Schmidt loses on a 50-50 call on a clean out by Jack Morgan against Carlo Tizano. It's a 50-50 call anywhere in the world, except it's even not a 50-50 call because it's from a scored try. At the end of a match, it's going to take some huge balls to say, I'm going to unwind that on uncertain footage that there was ever really a direct connect to the head. There's a clutch of a head, which turns out later the HIA cleared. So he was not HIA. He could have played the next week. So we know he didn't get hit on the head. So there's a bit of that. He comes in the entry gate wrong. His bum is not facing his own goal line. So he actually enters the tackle zone pre-ruck wrong, right? So he could even be dismissed on that grounds. But so it's all on the hit by a very low Jack Morgan. Joe Schmidt has options in his press conference. He can come in like Heineken Meyer and say, the referee's always right, tough call, better team on the day, get him next week. Congratulate Andy Farrell, lose well. Or he can come in and say, tough call, rubber the green, didn't get it, really tough call, proud of my guys, Carlo didn't dive. That's middle ground. Yeah, game is not brought into disrepute. Or can come in and be snarky and a bit slimy, in my opinion, and say, referees have got to focus on safety. 9.2, forget, not even mention the entry. Don't even talk about what Jack Morgan could have done differently in split second. Hyper focus on Andrea's words that they arrived at the same time. Disingenuously ignoring that Andrea meant they got into the tackle zone before ruck was created at about the same time. Okay, he's Italian, and so you're being smarky. You're being tricky, and then look really earnest and go, safety is really important. Will Kelleher from the Times follows up with Joe and says, "Are you saying the referees were not concerned with Carlo Tizano's safety?" And Joe doesn't disabuse them. He sticks with it, which brought him into World Rugby purview, because now you're saying the referees were departing from player safety by negative implication. So all of it's being good at being bad, right? It's being very passive aggressive. It's not being bold and really out there like Rassie. Rassie would just say shit, right? And so it's being the other way. It's being the blazer guy, the elbow patches, and the soft loafers kind of guy, the smart boy, the head boy. And so he says that, and I think that's shitty. I mean, that's my personal opinion. But I'm not going to go crazy about it. So people write articles, like Wayne Barnes puts an article and says, that was really bad by Joe Schmidt. He escaped sanction penalty. World Rugby did spank him a little bit verbally and said, hey, chill. Our refs really do try for safety. That was just a garden variety clean out. I mean, give me a fucking break. Stop focusing on one play when you lost an 18-point lead. Who did this to me? No, Joe. You did this to you. You couldn't defend. So who does that better? Look around. and copy a rush defense with blitz. Stop doing the drift, whatever. There's ways you can approach that. Or pray for a monsoon and dead rubber, and then you can say, look, we won. But Wayne Barnes writes this article. He can just stay on the story of Joe Schmidt and Carlo Tizzano and how he made an entire generation of Australian potential fans fixated on the bad call instead of the terrible defense. And so it's ugly, it's poisonous. We didn't really lose. We won. It was 2 points, and if they got the right call, so that, which I think is the worst kind of fandom, who did this to us. Wayne Barnes writing his article, it's a good article actually, stop talking about Carlo Tizzano getting slammed on social media. What about Andrea? What about the refs that we say are so scarce and rare? And do you really want to look at every single clean out? If you're putting everything on your jackal instead of your clean out, get used to a ratio of looking at rugby that's insane. Wayne says, well, Rassie basically started this. And so then I thought, how many times have I seen someone gets up there and says, well, we were playing against 16 refs, and they want to bring Rassie into the article. I've even seen it when the guy said was before Rassie, and they still bring Rassie in as if he invented it. Are you saying that coaches never slammed refs before Rassie did his video? And are we also saying that forevermore, if there's ever a coach that slams a ref, we're going to go, well, Rassie made that okay. How did Rassie make it okay? He got banned, the most significant ban of any coach. He got fined. How is that enticing for other coaches? What would a coach say? Like, I want that to happen to me. They don't. It's a job. They don't want to be banned and fined. Most of them don't have the comfort or the belief or the win record to be able to sustain that. They would just get fired. So they're not really encouraged by that. What they're encouraged to do is to be snarky and slimy about it and never do a video because that's what made it bad. Why? What made it bad? They all do videos post-match and say, here are the mistakes you made against my team, not against the other team. They all do that. So the problem was the release, the leak, the fact that they got out. And so now you're just arguing about what gets out. But if you looked at the video and you watched it, you wouldn't see anyone say someone cheated. You wouldn't say it was 16 men. You wouldn't say that we were robbed. Like you just saw ruck penalty after ruck penalty that Rassie disagreed with. There were 17 mistakes. He said there were 22. It was a high mistake game. And then he got punished for it, which I'm fine with, by the way, because it was disrespectful. But I don't know if it brought the game into disrepute. If you say someone cheated, that's disrepute. If you say the ref picked me out, or like Matt Williams saying he cost us the game 3 times, that's disrepute, because then organized crime and gambling syndicates are attracted to that. And they go, wow, there's a sport with lots of money with one guy who can make you win or lose. How much do they get paid? Ooh, I'll double that. It's obvious. So I don't think we should go down the road of saying, Rassie was the beginner, the alpha, the omega, the creator, the Adam in the Garden of Eden, with coaches getting mad at refs. Let's look at, why is our game so complicated that 1,000 really well-versed rugby fans, neutrals, could watch almost any ruck, and they could disagree over who made which fault and who could be penalized? Why do we have touch judges that don't go on the field so they help us on offsides? Why is there not a scrum cam all the time? Why do we have TMOs not just being a bunker that's international, with a central court that actually makes decisions so they're all the same? Like what? Let's look at other things instead of who did this to us. Rassie did this to us. In the wash-up of the World Cup, Fabien Galtier and some of his players said the worst things about rugby, like absolutely said they got robbed, and they dishonestly took 5 material errors, only 5. It's actually a pretty well ref game by Ben O'Keefe, and they said, look, there's 5. They leaked it in Midi Olympique. 3 of them were against French, and 2 were against the Box, and they really canceled each other out. Sliding doors. So we haven't shown ourselves to be grown-ups enough to handle World Rugby telling us what really happened. but we need to get there. And one thing we should stop is putting Rassie in every article that has anything to do with a coach saying something, unless that coach is getting banned and fined, then I'm fine. Then we can compare the ban and the fine. But when people are just saying whatever they want, slamming a ref, I think being dishonest about it, and then they don't get banned and fined, then shut up about Rassie. He shouldn't be in your article. Take his name out of the mouth of your article.
Before we move on to the next point, why is Rassie picked out? Why is Rassie being vilified? Is it his personality? Is it the fact that the Springboks are successful? Is it because he lends himself to it? Why did they pick on him? Why didn't they pick Jeff Wilson or whoever, Scott Robertson or Eddie Jones for that matter? Why Rassie specifically?
Yeah, that's the part where there's some truth to it. I think Rassie is provocative. And I think there's part of his personality that is provocative on purpose. Part of that's good coaching. You take on all the barbs and wires and spears, because then it makes your players, who I think by all accounts are routinely viewed as some of the nicest players in the world. They're not thugs. Even the tough guy, the enforcer, Ibn Etzebeth, long ago lost that label. He's just admired around the world as the quintessential hard lock who doesn't play dirty. So maybe Rassie's like, I'll be that guy. That's number one. So again, Rassie shouldn't say, who did this to me either. Rassie should say, this is how I am. I roll this way. I do documentaries where I reveal way more than any other coach. His press conferences are far more candid at his own expense. He's already said that he was a guy, as a young guy, he wouldn't pick. He's got a personality that likes to push. And when things are going well for him, he can be very, very sarcastic, and he loves himself. I think he would always say he was the best guy to lead. If anything was going wrong, he wanted to be in charge. So that kind of person, and some of us are like that, we know we're going to get more attacks. We know we're not the underdogs. It's impossible for us to claim underdog. We can pretend for a while, but in reality, no one in the outside world goes, oh yeah, you're a feeble, fragile, delicate creature. Like, we're tough, okay? So I think Rassie owns that, and he kind of says, come at me, bro, whatever. I can handle it. And I think it's somewhat, he delights sometimes in the furor. So that's the part that I think he's learned to contain more, and he does sometimes react, like he did to Matt Williams recently. And I think he has to sort of contain that and make sure it's just the right calibration. So I don't think you want to be doing it all the time. So mine's 20-1, right? And I'd be nervous in my life if there was no lawyer jokes. I'd be nervous if people didn't sort of, have some envy and hatred towards me. I go, what am I doing wrong? I need to do enough in life and make enough tough calls and big decisions that people look at me and they're a bit cross. I get that part. So I do think that tails into the second myth, which is that Rassie is about win at all costs. Like, he's just about the win. Like, nothing else matters. I have a hard time seeing that, because why does he bring back players from the cold who've been injured and say, I want you back? Why does he bring back old lions like Franco Mostert, who's got probably like 17 broken bones, and do that? Why does he cry and bring someone in like Makazole Mapimpi, again, as an old wing? I think there's a sentimentality to Rassie that's not just about wins at all costs. Second, I think he did learn from, his ban and his fine and that period of time. My evidence for that is, the loss in Durban to Ireland, like losses that were really tough. I don't think he even mentions the referee. I don't think it's even part of his calculus anymore. He's just fixated on the game itself and the shape of it. I don't know if that's wins at all costs either. If you put 18 debutants or you shuffle an entire lineup, and if it was wins at all costs, he would just keep playing a World Cup winning team forever and ever and ever, like Andy Farrell does. Just, continuity, cohesion. So there's a part of me that thinks he does think about life after Rassie, and he, what's that meaning of planting a tree that you'll never be under the shade of. I think he's doing things that are short-term risky on wins and losses, but they create a brighter future that he may not be able to enjoy. So, I think it's a harsh criticism. I think he's hell of competitive, right? He's a very competitive guy. But then you peel back a guy like Joe Schmidt, very, sophisticated, always wears a blazer. But look what he just did. I mean, that's hyper competitive to say you didn't really win, and then the dead rubber will make us sort of the moral. Like, that's just a guy who doesn't want to lose. He wants to taint your victory. He wants to tarnish it. He wants to be able to say there's an asterisk. Warren Gatlin's still doing that with the Hermanus Whale stuff. You didn't really win. I won. And that's just a competitor. That's a guy that you're playing a game with. You're playing poker at the house in Lagabon on a weekend, and you just deny that it's just people who don't want to say they lost. So I think if you put a blanket around the top coaches of the world, like the Michael Checkers and, Fabien Gaultier's, none of them like to say they lost, okay? They are beyond the spectrum of competitive compared to the people in your actual life. But I don't like things like Warren Gatlin and others. Williams does it as well, is that Rassie ruined. He ruined the 2021 Lions tour. I hear that a lot. And I think that's so stupid and false and dishonest to forget that COVID was in the picture. You cannot understand 2021 Lions tour without COVID. I mean, it's impossible. You start there and you end there. Number one, there were no crowds. If you take exactly the same style of play and with the exact plays that happened, but you have 75,000 people roaring, 40,000 of them Lions in red with their colonial pith hat helmets, and the fire of that, everything is different. It was the quiet, still mausoleum funereal stage that took all the life out of it, and it taught us something, which is this thing we love, this live sport. Even if it's expensive and it's hard, and we complain about the ticket prices, it's something about devoting ourselves to the game and being there in numbers. And one of the great things about Lions tours is you do have the traveling fans of 40,000 people. That's unusual. And it makes everything higher stakes. And then Mornay Staines' kick is much scarier when you have 40,000 people saying, miss it, in their hearts, ready to cheer for you when you miss. That's the first thing. Second thing is no one could practice. People were training in their houses, in their flats. They were like all these, Instagram videos of this is how I'm training. I'm picking up a chair. So you were going to have to do a lower risk rugby. It's insane to go into a Lions tour, especially if they're home team and you lose the first one. Why would you go expansive in test 2? That makes no sense. No rugby coach out there. Joe Schmidt's being lauded right now for the dead rubber monsoon win. I mean, that was the lowest risk rugby I've ever seen in my life. You just go up and yak. So I think in retrospect, once that first game was lost, Springboks were never going to go expansive until they won the series. The third thing is, it takes two to tango. If you look at all the games of Warren Gatlin over a decade, I mean, Wales played that kind of rugby. That's Warren ball. And when you say, I'm playing a guy who wants to play that way, and you decide, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw the ball around and I want to get jackaled a lot. That's stupid too. So Rassie was playing the hand he was dealt. And then once this first test went the bad way for him, he had to go back to classic Springbok rugby to win the series. I think every single coach in his position would have done the same thing, is what I'm saying. But I don't think it's fair to say that he doesn't adhere to rugby values. I think there's a lot of values inside a sport like rugby. In the South African context in particular, I think no one embodies the idea of inclusiveness and true transformation, of putting a hand up to people who don't have the smooth ride, the craven week, the right blazer than Rassie. I think Rassie himself, you could say, is maybe a new version of rugby values. And it's the kind of rugby values probably rugby needs if it's going to make enough money to feed itself, to clothe itself, to open up new leagues, to bring in communities, to not just keep staying with, these 20 schools, these 10 schools in Australia, these 5 in Argentina. It's got to be different. And Rassie's a guy who knows how to walk the walk, talk the talk. And yeah, he's disruptive and he says things that are crazy. But if you look at what they've done, what's the effect of him? The effect of him is that entire new communities are playing rugby, thinking about rugby, buying rugby merchandise, attending games, traveling. You go to Murrayfield for an end-of-year tour, nothing friendly game, you're going to see 40,000 South Africans, not the 40,000 Brits traveling now. Now it's the 40,000 Cephas. So, I think that's it. I do have a theory, though. One of my main theories of why there's still this antagonism, MV, and I think it's because people say this. But he never really apologized. I think for all my Australian fans, and I've been riding on the road for a long time, it always comes back to that, which is, but you never really apologized. Like, we don't believe your apology. And I don't know about you, but it's very difficult in a family, even in a family system, to decide what is the correct apology and whether it was true, whether it was sincere. I kind of don't bog down on it anymore. I'm an apology guy. You will get an easy apology from me. I'm still going to want to beat you. And it's not going to change my actions, but I am fine with saying I'm sorry very quickly. I just found that my life is better if I do that. But not everyone is like that. And so some people, it's more about their actions. So do they change? Do they keep doing the thing you said that you wanted an apology for? No. So then fine. I just move on. And I haven't seen any evidence of any nonsense or shenanigans by Rassie about why the Boks lost. It's not about the referee. I mean, I guess there could be a situation where it really was, but it's usually not. It's 99% not about one call made at the ruck or the breakdown by a ref. It's just not. And it has to be 10 or 12 or 15. They have to be material and they have to change the flow of the game. So I feel like he's apologized with his behavior and his actions. When the Boks lose, I hate it, but I don't have this fear now of like, oh, what's Rassie going to do? I don't. And I think that's unfair to keep saying that he does when he doesn't. At some point, you're 4 years out of date. Your news is obsolete. It's done. Move on. There's other coaches out there complaining about refs, and Rassie is not one of those guys.
Like, one of the favorite things that people get accused Rassie of is the fact that he's supposedly ruined Nick Berry's career with that video of his, the ill-fated video that you referred to earlier. Is there any truth to that?
I mean, that's one of the most preposterous things I've heard. So, number one, our referees are a little bit different from a lot of the officials in other sports. I'm big money sports. In most of the big money sports, you don't even know the names of the referees. Like, they're not even a guy that you know. Like, if someone names the referee, you go, interesting. Howard Smith, who cares? I don't go, oh, that's it. We're not going to win now. Rugby fans are really good at saying, okay, that's it. There it is. It's Andrew Brace. So, the scrums are going to be it. I mean, come on, guys. It's a way of almost torpedoing your own sport. On the question of Nick Berry, he was one of the 2 or 3 guys featured in Whistleblowers, which is a good documentary, but it's, in my view, an unwise documentary because you're exposing the referees to fame. You're making them more famous. There's a picture of, footage of them in their kitchen having a cereal bowl with their kid. So now the kid's part of it. What are you doing? If the whole point is you want to make your referees more anonymous, more sober arbiters like judges, where you're not supposed to be fixated on who it was, but what they actually ruled on, then stop with that. But no, I think they made him a cause célèbre, and there was overwrought discussions about how this will devastate him. I mean, that's what I hear about Nick Berry, is that he's a pretty happy guy doing a happy life. He likes his life. He's getting big tests. He's been picked for any number of big tests. He's going to be obviously picked in the World Cup. He's one of the guys. And And so I think we need to stop with this, outrage and doomsday talk. The person who had the most jeopardy from being kind of a disrespectful bully, that's what I'll just say about how Rassie approached that whole saga, was Rassie. Rassie was the one the most on the chopping block. It was not Nick Berry. Similarly, when we say that, it's almost like we're saying you're not allowed to say anything. I think fans vent, and they're going to vent. That's okay. Make the rules simpler. Stop making refs as famous as possible. I saw this. There were all these clips by World Rugby where they were saying, and now here's the refs having a croissant. And what are you doing? Why are you making them famous? Pay them well, train them well, double their salary. I don't care, but don't try to make them more famous. Have rules around social media, for example. Don't have Nigel ranking whether referees did or did not make the right decision on a proper platform, World Rugby. You're almost exposing the refs to even more criticism. Just let the thing get played. Publish what a proper error rate is for refs. Give us an idea of the ranking of refs, not by name, but just here's our spectrum. And here's why the best refs, based on objective criteria, get the big games. And stop fixating on where someone's from. And I know that just because someone's from, a certain place doesn't mean they're going to make a certain decision. So I think that was overdone, exaggerated. I wish Nick Berry the best. I wish Rassie Erasmus the best. Both of those guys seem to be doing really well. Nick's a lot younger, so we don't know how far he goes, but he might end up having an incredibly distinguished career. I hope the two of them bump into each other somewhere and have a beer and make that into a video. But I think that was too much.
All right, and he said the next one is he's accused of being a typically arrogant South African, or Safa for that matter. I mean, we know what it means by that, but is he really guilty of that? Is it a crime that he can be guilty of, for that matter?
I think there's part of that that's probably fair. I don't know, arrogance is probably a tough word, but I think he can sometimes be a blowhard. He likes it. He likes to stir it up. But I don't think it's typical. I actually don't think Rassie is typical at all. I think Rassie is actually a very atypical guy, and then people from the outside don't understand that. I think they put on him, they conflate, they put on him like a lot of typical things of a traditional sort of old-fashioned Afrikaans South African guy. But when you actually hang around with people in Munster and realize how innovative he was and how open he was to a lot of, I don't know, just strange things, and how much of a party guy he is, and how irreverent he is, and how he's not fixated on, what we used to do in 1952. He's really, I would say, atypical, first of all. Second of all, he's not, I'm sure he has faith and he believes in things, but he doesn't wear sort of a faith system or religion on his sleeve. And that's number two. And that's a big point of not being typical. And number three, I think his swagger is different. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he's confident, on the border of too much confident, but it's born of analysis. Most of what he's really swaggering about is not some we're powerful, we're bigger than you, we're stronger. I don't think that's the way he's designing this Springbok team. It's the smallest forwards in the world, Kwagga Smith and Dion Fourie, were kind of his masterstroke. It's an open-sider Siya Kolisi that's not viewed sometimes as an open-sider, but he's really good in the trams. It's tinkering with how the Lekkerbacks work, the smallest guys in rugby. I just think it's not this power and run over you and we're going to smash you. The 6'2" doesn't even rely on that. The 7'1" even less. It all relies on the smallest, quickest forwards and the most versatility in the back. So yeah, I kind of think the typical part's way off, but I think fair enough, he definitely has confidence in himself.
I was at that press conference yesterday, and I said to you afterwards, the one thing that struck me is he's very, very confident. Not cocky, but he's very confident. When he walks into the room, you pick up on the confidence. And he knows the answers to all the questions. Everything you ask him, you can see that he's thought about it before. He was never caught out, unawares or anything like that. So the supreme impression is confidence, can be, I suppose, interpreted as overconfidence to a degree. But I think it's more to do with the fact that they hate losing to him. So they're looking for something to hate about him. So the last thing you said was the video. We touched on it before, but the video was apparently the worst thing that's happened to rugby ever. Ever. And Rassie was the architect of that. I mean, we talked about it before, but that's absolute nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah. On your point about confidence, I've met him one time and had a conversation with him, and he looks into you like he's trying to figure you out. And I don't feel like I don't think I'm ever overawed by anyone. I don't feel like I was on that occasion, but I like to be the one figuring you out. So he was staring into me, I was staring into him, and I go, whoa, this is terrible. This is weird, because this guy, he won't crack. I don't know if there's too many situations in a rugby context that would make Rassie fold. And I suppose maybe around this video is where I think he went to his worst instincts. So I think that's why I kind of, root for him and always, want him to succeed, because I feel like he's a guy who tries to grow. Like, so if I can put it that way, I'm not going to take the worst snapshot of his life in one moment. Like, what's your worst day, MVA? What's your worst day, guys out there watching this? And I'm going to characterize you on that one moment. Oh, shit, man. If you had that one of those for me, I'm going straight to hell. So, I just don't like that way of judging people. So if that was his worst public moment of rugby, then okay, fine. Factor in that that's one moment. And it was a moment where, he was under the most stress and he was facing his abyss, and he went the wrong way, which is he could have handled that same situation with humor, with wit, even with some sarcasm, or like Joe Schmidt, do it in such a way that's very snarky, maybe has the same impact and you don't get spanked. But let's take this principle of the video, because I always wondered about this. If someone's really ranting about it, I go, tell me exactly what it was about the video that brought the game into disrepute. Like, go. But don't talk about whether it was leaked, and don't talk about how Nick Berry felt, and don't talk about, just tell me the actual video. How did it bring the game, the sport of rugby, into disrepute? And what you find is people just kind of meander and they say nothing. Blah, 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 blah. And you go, wait. I think I heard in there somewhere that it exposed a lot of errors by the ref, because they were, and Nick had to admit them because we saw the response later. And I go, okay, now I get you. It's embarrassing to the sport that in a high-level game there would be that many errors, and some of those errors were not necessarily Berry's fault. They were the fault of the game itself being so ridiculously complicated that if you do have a negation coach like Warren Gatland and a super clever response coach like Rassie, you end up having this kind of ridiculous game where every single ruck, every single breakdown there's 5 different options. One of them is not to blow anything at all, and one of them is to ping someone or card someone. So that's the first thing. And I go, well, why is that? If I was to say something about you, and I said, here is a video of what you did, cutting trees down. You did this wrong. You did the wrong prep. Your chain was wrong. You calculated the fall wrong, and then I'm just showing you that. And it's supposed to stay inside the workplace so you can be a better lumberjack. And then it gets leaked. That. Or I can say, you cheated. 2 words. You stole. 2 words. You lied. 2 words. I mean, I'm fine with the video. I don't like it, but I can handle it. I don't want you saying that other stuff. I'll fight you. Because now you say it in front of my kids. Now you're bringing me into disrepute. On the one hand, you're saying I'm incompetent. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I don't like that, but maybe I get better. And also, don't do that, because that's rude that you're doing that. You're exposing me. But if you say that I lied, I'll fight you forever. If you say I cheated, that is saying that the sport is rigged. It's not a fair contest. There's integrity lacking. And you're telling me I'm a bigot, I'm a cheat, I'm a liar, I'm a thief. So now that's worse. But you only said 2 words and there was no video. So I do think we should stop this sort of weird, I don't think it works in real life. It doesn't, the law doesn't really think about it that way. The law is much more about, defamation and false assertion of fact about you that would tend to harm your reputation. I mean, saying that a referee made some bad calls because the sport's too complicated, I don't know if it hurts your reputation, But I think if you say you didn't want us to win, or you cooked the books, or you rigged it, that definitely will harm your reputation. So I do think we hopefully can get that video, and that era can be in our rear view mirror soon, and we can move beyond it and talk about things more interesting in the game, which is how do we make our game so clear that anyone watching any particular scenario, we kind of know what it is. And we kind of know that 6 weeks versus 3 weeks versus 12 weeks. Right now, it's a guessing game. I mean, I don't know what they want, tackle, school. To me, it's just a big mess. And I would put all the top heads together in a 6-week camp. Don't come out until you've got this really clear. Don't change the laws. Just figure out how to streamline these situations and move on. And then on Rassie, I would just say enjoy him while we have him. And I'm saying that to people who are Kiwis, people who are from England. Enjoy this guy. It's a wild ride. In most other sports, teams and people that led those teams that have had this much success, love them or hate them, you just have this grudging respect, and you go, instead of saying, who did this to us, these terrible suffers and Rassie, what are they doing that's good? Let's copy it and make it better. In fact, let's out Rassie.
I just want to go back one step before we finish this off. You mentioned about the referees becoming too much of celebrity, I call it that, and too much attention being paid to them. Isn't part of this hatred of Rassie the fact that he's now become too big, almost too much of a celebrity himself? By not necessarily by choice, but he's such a public figure. Isn't that part of the problem, do you think?
Well, I think for sure. The part that I don't know if Rassie did or did not want to be famous. Sometimes I think he does, and sometimes I think he doesn't, and I never know. I can never solve it. I think maybe he's more of a nerd than people think, and more of a student. And his friendship with Jacques Nienaber is instructive, and Tony Brown and Jakob Piper. I mean, he's not just hanging around like a bunch of cool guys on a Joel. He likes analytical people. And I wonder if that was his first love, was deconstructing rugby and understanding it and always trying to learn, coupled with the guy who has too much brandy and he's in his cargo shorts having a dance in Dispatch. I mean, I don't know. He's a bit of a both thing. Now that fame has found him, and now that he's been the executive producer of the most successful documentary, by far the best. I mean, what's that? Mephistopheles. Everyone can, once they get the fame and they get a bit more opportunities and wealth, it's kind of hard to turn it down. No? Mm-hmm. And so I think now, he does play, like he follows Australian rugby for 2 weeks and then he'll unfollow. And I think he quite likes announcing early so he can have the space. I own the news cycle. Come on. It's okay. I think he's won enough of the hard stuff to now enjoy this stuff.
Yeah. I want to draw the analogy with football, where they have celebrity managers like Jose Mourinho and Pep Guardiola. Many of the Premier coaches that we've spoken to have quoted, basically. Isn't that a thing that rugby is trying to create, sort of a football-like biosphere almost, atmosphere, and trying to copy almost what makes football successful?
Yeah, but I think it's inevitable. So once a sport gets truly professional and bigger, coaches become very much the celebrities. I mean, the value of coaching and good coaching, it rises in disproportion as money comes in, because the analytics get so much better. Remember our discussion with Gus, analyst Gus, and just, when we talked about some of these top football clubs, they might have a team of 13 analysts. They dig down into such little tiny edges because top sport is won by fine margins. Look at the Lions tour that just finished. What if Joe Schmidt had a team of 5 analysts and they had exposed to him exactly what to do on Finn Russell? And like maybe someone just said, study Finn Russell. I want to know what chewing gum he has. And that analyst just does that. I mean, his left kneecap goes, all this stuff. So I think in the end, coaches become celebrities because the ability of a coach to hire the right coaches, assistant coaches, get your S&C right, get your psychology messaging right, your themes, pick your Felix instead of your other guy, and then frame the right questions for your analysts. It's almost like AI. Fine, AI is fine, but are you framing the right questions for AI to become even more intelligent? So I think in the end, the right coach let's be honest, Rassie had 10 of Heineken Meyer's players as part of his spine. It wasn't like he just went out and found a new tribe of South African players floating upward in Limpopo somewhere. He was the same guys. And, Joe Schmidt turning the Wallabies into a tougher force. You can just look at same group of players and then you imagine a different coach. So I think it's hard to discount what a guy like Rassie has done and what he could still do if he still has the energy. And this is what I like about Rassie as well, is he seems to always be reinventing himself just a little bit every season. So again, that's not typical. He's not like one of those old school South African coaches that said there's one doctrine, this is how we play, and it's always about, this, and this. You first have to go these phases, hard yards, and then you go wide. Rassie is sort of like, what if we do this? What if we do something completely different?
Last question. When is it ever going to go away? Everybody's favorite villain. Will it stop when the Springboks stop being successful under his guidance maybe, and it will fade away and then somebody else will maybe become the new villain? Or do you think Rassie, the person, will always be, until the day that he leaves rugby, be the guy that gets vilified?
It's already going away. There are a lot of people who almost worship the guy outside South Africa in terms of rugby. They don't always understand all the cultural references and stuff, but they really, really look up to him. That process will continue if Springboks are successful. If, for example, they went back to back to back, you'd see these glowing biographies published as coffee table books in London and Sydney and Auckland. He'd be invited for these incredible, banquets as a keynote speaker. And so, but there's always going to be a residual as well, this 5-10% of sourpusses that, they haven't got their life together enough to escape the envy evil. Listen, I think envy is attractive to people, and ankle biting someone else instead of trying to do something yourself. But it's a terrible way to live. And, the sooner you get rid of that, the better. Even if it did give you clicks or kept you employed on some, channel somewhere, just stop it. Don't do it. So I think it has its own way of coming out. Obviously when, was it Sir Alec Ferguson? Was that the name of the Man U guy?
Yeah.
While he was playing, he was hated by so many people. And now he's like viewed as the friendly grandfather of soccer. And, he's quoted. Vince Lombardi, we had Johan van Graan on, and he was quoting Vince Lombardi. That guy was a hard ass, man. He was a tough guy, the son of a gun. But, I think it's in the end, as you get a little bit older and as Rassie gets some more gray hair and people see him, I think there's going to be the sentimentality. And obviously, once he hangs up his laptop or whatever he uses, whatever you call it, hang up his gloves, it'll be fond, oh, man, we miss Rassie. Yeah.
Miss those days. Thanks, Harry. Appreciate it, man. Good one.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.